Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, President Trump said US forces are moving towards Iran, raising tariffs to 45% for nations doing business and claiming he stopped mass executions, an assertion Iran denies. Tehran warned of severe retaliation if its supreme leader is harmed, while Russia dismissed US pressure and said it will continue doing business with Iran. Mahashweta Lala with this report.
Anything ever happens, we're going to blow the whole country is going to get blown up.
Days after Trump's warning to Iran, the US president said a big force was heading towards Iran, which he called an ancient culture. He also took credit for stopping the execution of 837 young Iranians.
Where do things stand with Iran? The U.S. has got sizable military assets.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction, and we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. I saw 837 hangings on Thursday. They would have been dead. Every one of them would have been hung. This is like from 1,000 years ago. This is an ancient culture. Very smart people, by the way, but it's an ancient culture. 837, mostly young men, were going to be hung on Thursday. And I said, if you hang those people, you're going to be hit harder than you've ever been hit. It'll make what we did to your Iran nuclear look like peanuts. And an hour before this horrible thing was going to take place, they canceled it. And they actually said they canceled it. They didn't postpone it. They canceled it. So that was a good sign. But we have an armada. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction, and maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
U.S. warships, including the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, several destroyers and fighter aircraft started moving from the Asia-Pacific last week as tensions between Iran and the United States soared following a severe crackdown on protests across Iran in recent months. Earlier reports have suggested that there were attempts to topple the theocratic regime of Ayatollah Khamenei, but Trump ignored the question on Khamenei's removal and reiterated that the United States was watching Iran.
Would you like the supreme leader to step down or to go into exile?
I don't want to get into that, but they know what we're looking for.
You said today that they
There's a lot of killing going on.
Iran has warned against any harm caused to their supreme leader, saying they would chop the hands and set the world on fire if anything unwanted were to happen to the Ayatollah.
We do not pay attention to Trump's bluster. We know that if any hand is raised to assault our leader, we will not only cut off that hand decisively and courageously, and this is not just rhetoric, but we will set the world on fire. We will strip them of any security and leave no safe place for them.
Earlier, Trump said that countries doing business with Iran will be slapped with 25% tariffs, but now he has increased it to 45%.
Are you still planning to go ahead with those tariffs that you had mentioned on the secondary tariffs for those affected by businesses in Iran, the 25% tariffs?
I am doing that, yeah. We're doing that. If you do business with Iran, you're going to have a tariff of 25%.
Meanwhile, Russia continues to do business with Iran and is not deterred by any threats.
Many other projects are now being worked on, and I see no reason for us or our friends from Iran to halt them. Yes, Donald Trump uses tariffs as a political instrument. Use of unilateral enforcement measures in trade and economic relations always means that the initiator of these measures is not fully confident in his own competitiveness in global markets.
Meanwhile, Iran's top prosecutor denied claims by the US president that his intervention halted the execution of people detained in nationwide protests, calling his remarks completely false. Trump's threat to Iran also comes as the US House of Representatives failed to pass a resolution that would have barred the president from further military actions against Venezuela. Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, is Donald Trump quietly preparing military strikes on Iran or orchestrating a high-stakes bluff? As U.S. aircraft carriers go dark, missile submarines reposition, and air defenses move, leaving the world guessing whether deterrence is tipping into war. Watch our next report by Sandeep Unithan.
Is President Donald Trump planning to strike Iran? Strike assets like nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and possibly nuclear-powered cruise missile submarines are being moved into place. When Trump threatened to strike at the regime in Tehran in early January after a crackdown on civilian protesters, there were no US carrier strike groups in the region. The closest aircraft carrier was the USS Abraham Lincoln, far away in the South China Sea. Our GCC countries refused to allow their bases to be used to strike at Iran. But things have been moving on since then. The Lincoln Strike Group was asked to move towards the Arabian Sea. On the 20th of January, the Lincoln Carrier Strike Group crossed the Malacca Strait and entered the Indian Ocean. The Carrier Strike Group was doing a speed of over 20 knots, after which it went dark, a euphemism for the strike group switching off its AIS or Automatic Ship Identification System to hide its location. But given its course and speed, the Lincoln Strike Group could be entering the Arabian Sea by the 23rd of January. The Lincoln is escorted by destroyers and one or more nuclear-powered attack submarines, which provide it with an unprecedented air and underwater screen. The Lincoln has between 48 and 60 FA-18 strike aircraft, which have an unrefueled range of around 2,300 kilometers. The Arabian Sea begins here near the tip of India. So for launching these aircraft to strike at Iran, the carrier, the Lincoln, will need to travel further up towards the North Arabian Sea. Now, the Lincoln could also be accompanied by one or more of these unique submarines, the Ohio-class SSGNs. These are underwater missile barges, strategic ballistic missile submarines converted to carry Tomahawk guided missiles. Now, one Ohio-class SSGN carries 154 Tomahawk guided cruise missiles. Now, there's other activity to suggest that airstrikes against Iran may be imminent. Between the 20th and 22nd of January, multiple flights of C-17 heavy military transport aircraft have been landing at the Mafraq Al-Khwaja Air Base in Jordan. Now, this indicates some kind of defensive weapons, possibly Patriot 3 missile batteries, are being moved into place to protect Israel from Iranian missile attack, as Tehran has threatened to attack Israel in the past if the US attacked it. Now, the US could also be moving in B-2 stealth bombers to strike at Iran, as it did during the June 22nd Operation Midnight Hammer strikes last year. Now, these bombers can fly off the Diego Garcia Island base or fly in directly from the continental United States. That's because they have an unrefueled range of over 11,000 kilometers, and they can carry something like 20 tons of weapons, including air-to-surface missiles and bombs. Now, the US used both B-2s and Ohio-class SSGNs to strike at Iran during Operation Midnight Hammer. That was to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons capability last year. The question is what Trump wants to do with Iran this time around in 2026.
Now, after Trump's fiery attack on Canadian Prime Minister Carney at Davos, where he said that Canada lives because of the United States, the US president has now rescinded the invitation to Canada on board of peace. The US president on Truth Social posted the announcement. Trump posted, and I quote, "Dear Prime Minister Carney, please let this letter serve to represent that the Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you regarding Canada's joining what will be the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time." This US-Canada rift started after the Canadian Prime Minister received a standing ovation for his speech at Davos, in which he urged nations to accept the end of a rules-based global order. Meanwhile, Spain has also declined Trump's invite to join the Board of Peace. Carney pushed back against Donald Trump's claim and said the country thrives on its own values of inclusion, openness, and shared prosperity. A day after Trump's remarks at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Carney said Canada's strength came from its people and its institutions, not its dependence on any single partner.
When we live our values, we grow as individuals and we build as a people. When we're kind, kindness grows. When we're united, unity grows. When we're Canadian, inclusive, fair, ambitious, Canada grows. Canada and the United States have built a remarkable partnership in the economy, in security, and in rich cultural exchange. But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
Will it be a brief bonhomie or a renewed feud between Tesla CEO Elon Musk and US President Donald Trump? Because Elon Musk joked about Trump's board of peace at Davos. Musk said US President Donald Trump's board of peace is little piece of Greenland, little piece of Venezuela. He had earlier ridiculed WEF and Davos, describing it as an unelected world government that the people never asked for and don't want, and calling it boring, respectively. Trump rolled out his new board of peace at Davos, where leaders of several countries joined the US president in the signing-in ceremony. Trump officials also presented ambitious proposals for a new Gaza during the World Economic Forum ceremony.
I heard about the formation of the Peace Summit, and I was like, is that PIEC? You know, a little piece of Greenland, a little piece of Venezuela.
we got one.
All we want is peace.
Okay.
India's most influential news platform, the India Today Group, had a decisive role to play at the World Economic Forum, with Vice Chairperson and Executive Editor-in-Chief Kalli Purie first leading a conversation on India's growth story and then joining an elite panel of global journalists to discuss the challenges facing journalism, from government interference to trust and the impact of artificial intelligence.
What is the state of the fourth estate? It was in this high-stakes dialogue at the World Economic Forum that India's top news network also found a place. In a time of growing global disorder, as authority increasingly presses upon the fourth estate, how has the India Today Group navigated these challenging times?
The third estate, which is sort of not really wanting you to call out problems. They want more confirmation bias, which puts the media a little bit more on the back foot. Because if you're always serving your audience with a confirmation bias, how do you then go around doing the watchdog job that you need to do? Everyone always wants more. And I would obviously like even more freedom to do more things. But I think that we have to work within a cultural context. In the end, media are observers, and we are front row to history being made. We can't just go around giving our own opinions on things. There is space for that, obviously, and we have that, but that's a mix in the bigger plate.
Ms. Purie also touched upon how the India Today Group is ensuring that journalism still remains people-centric.
One of the things that we are working on, and I think that it's nascent and it has had a good impact, is go back to creating constructive, candid conversations. We've actually set up a whole unit just to do that, triple Cs, where you get people from different communities who don't agree with each other to talk to each other and take out the experts, the journalists, the politicians out of that conversation.
We in the media sometimes try to console ourselves by saying, well, trust in all institutions is going down, trust in Congress, trust in organized religion. Well, fine, but trust in the media not only should be high because we are in a trust business, but it has to be high because I don't think you can have a well-functioning democracy where there is pervasive mistrust about the organizations that seek to purvey core facts about the way in which we organize our societies and live our lives.
The discussion also focused on use of AI in news broadcast and how it can be a double-edged sword.
I think many of us researchers are really worried about. That is how AI can be self-reinforcing and feeding itself evidence that it's itself generated.
Ms. Purie too addressed both the promise and the perils of AI.
We've been using AI in our media business for the last 2.5 years. We do not use it for creating stories. We call it the AI sandwich, whereas there's human interference, or it starts with a human, may use a bit of AI in the work process, and it then ends with a human. So we have a news magazine. We've created almost 200 covers using AI.
As one of the world's most recognized news networks, the India Today Group has witnessed and led decades of change, transformation and innovation on full display at this Davos roundtable. Bureau Report, India Today.
U.S. immigration authorities detained at least 4 children, including a 5-year-old from a Minneapolis area school district this month as part of President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. The child, Liam Konia Ramos, aged 5, watched as masked agents took his father from the driveway of their home after the two returned from preschool. The agents then took the boy, who was wearing a blue hat and a Spider-Man backpack. The Department of Homeland Security said that Liam's father was in the country illegally but did not provide details or mention any criminal history. Neighbors in the community north of Minneapolis offered to take the boy, but the agents put the child in the back seat of a black SUV and sped away. The incident comes amid heightened tensions in the city after weeks of outcry that followed the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Good, 37-year-old, a U.S. citizen and mother of 3.
You asked a question about this 5-year-old kid. I actually saw this terrible story while I was coming to Minneapolis. We just left Toledo, Ohio this morning for an economic messaging event. And I see this story, and I'm a father of a 5-year-old, actually, a 5-year-old little boy. And I think to myself, oh my God, this is terrible. How did we arrest a 5-year-old? Well, I do a little bit more follow-up research. And what I find is that the 5-year-old was not arrested, that his dad was an illegal alien, and then when they went to arrest his illegal alien father, the father ran. So the story is that ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, what are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to let a 5-year-old child freeze to death? Are they not supposed to arrest an illegal alien in the United States of America? If the argument is that you can't arrest people who have violated our laws because they have children, then every single parent is going to be completely given immunity from ever being the subject of law enforcement. That doesn't make any sense. No one thinks that makes any sense.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, announcing that he will be welcoming the South American leader to India soon. Ministry of External Affairs in India is yet to announce the schedule of his trip, though. The Prime Minister emphasized that close cooperation between India and Brazil remains crucial for advancing shared interests of the Global South. The Brazilian president will visit India as both countries prepare for increased diplomatic engagement this year amid the U.S. tariff threat. During the call, Prime Minister Modi highlighted the progress of the India-Brazil strategic partnership. Before this, the two leaders spoke in August last year. That brings me to the end of this show, but before I go, here are some other stories doing the rounds from across the world and World at a Glance. Goodbye and take care.
Russian, Ukrainian and US negotiators are set to hold a 2-day trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi since Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is hopeful that the talks are a step towards ending the war. It comes after U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance finalized a deal to set up a majority American-owned joint venture company to avoid a U.S. ban on the popular social media app used by more than 200 million Americans. TikTok USDS joint venture LLC will secure US user data, apps and the algorithm through data privacy and cybersecurity measures. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump expressed happiness for his part in saving TikTok. President Donald Trump has filed a $5 billion lawsuit against JP Chase and its CEO, accusing the lender of debanking him by closing accounts for political reasons. The lawsuit filed said the nation's largest lender violated its own policies by singling him out to ride the political tide by terminating several of his accounts. The French government survived 2 votes of no confidence in Parliament over its decision to ram through the income part of the 2026 budget without giving the National Assembly the final say. A total of 269 lawmakers voted in favour of the no confidence motion presented by the hard left France Unbowed together with the Greens and Communists, whereas 288 votes were required to bring down the government. The coffin of fashion designer Valentino Garavani arrived at the Basilica of St. Mary of the Angels and Martyrs. Figures from the fashion world, along with figures from film and entertainment world and Rome citizens, gathered at the Basilica to pay their final respects to the fashion designer.